Hey, Algebra students, welcome to lesson 10, and this is going to be a short one video lesson. Actually, it's one video because we're just reviewing something you already know how to do. We're going to be adding and subtracting real numbers, putting together two skills that we learned in earlier lessons. Now, when I talk about adding real numbers, I'm talking adding numbers that are either positive or negative. Okay, so we learn how to add numbers like that. Subtracting is just changing a minus problem to a plus problem. Remember, like 5 minus 4 is just 5 plus negative 4. So we're going to add the opposite in the subtraction parts of these. And we're going to put together addition and subtraction into one process to solve problems that have mixed addition and subtraction. That's what we're really focused on. There are 4 steps to solving these problems, and really only 3 of these steps are different from what we've done before. First of all, we're going to rewrite the problem as addition only. Any subtraction parts are going to change into plus the opposite of. We're going to group terms with like signs. Once we have an all addition problem, with addition problems, you can move the terms around into different orders and it will still have the same result. So an all addition problem can be changed. We can group terms together that have like signs. And we're going to add the numbers with like signs. That part is easy. Because remember, anytime we add numbers with like signs, it's just like the addition that you're used to. It's just if the numbers were negative, we need to remember to put a negative in front of them at the end. And then lastly, we're going to finish adding. By this point, we'll have two numbers with different signs, or we're going to be done with the problem because all the numbers had the same signs and they were finished in the previous step. If we have two numbers with different signs, you know how to deal with that. We find the difference of the two numbers, and then we apply the sign of the number that had the greatest absolute value. So let's take a look at some of these practice problems and see if we can do this. And practice problem 1 has us adding 4 ninths and 2 ninths, and then subtracting 5 ninths. So let's see how this goes here. Letter A, it's going to be 4 over 9 plus 2 over 9 minus 5 over 9. And then let me put in those 9s, 9, 9. Some of them are better lined up than others. There we go. Okay, perfect. All right, so when I have this fraction problem, this is really easy because I already have a common denominator. I'm going to tell you in this lesson, in the practice problems, there's going to be a lot of problems where you have to find a common denominator. This one, they just give it to you right away. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to write it as addition only. That means I'm going to rewrite it, and I'm going to change this last one to plus the opposite of, and then put 5 over 9 in parentheses. So it's plus the opposite of 5 over 9. Now I don't have a great way of putting parentheses around that whole term. So I'm going to put parentheses on the outside here. And just so you know, it's important to realize that that parentheses is around the whole 5 ninths. It's on the top and the bottom. Okay. Now, I'm going to next group the terms with like signs. So they're already grouped. 4 ninths and 2 ninths are both positive. Those are together. Negative 5 ninths is different. That's going to be on the right. I add the numbers with like signs. So for my next step, I'm going to have 6 over 9 and then plus the opposite of 5 over 9. So let's see here. I should probably have put this minus inside the parentheses here. I'm going to do the same thing down here. That makes more sense as far as the syntax of this problem goes. And then these are both going to be over 9. Okay, there we go. All right, excellent. And then the last thing I need to do is finish adding. Here I have 6 over 9 plus negative 5 over 9. So what I do is I find the difference. 6 ninths minus 5 ninths is 1 ninth. And then I keep the sign of the one that had the largest absolute value. That was 6 ninths is bigger than 5 ninths. So I have to keep the positive sign. The answer is going to be 1 over 9. And that's my answer for this one. All right, let's take a look at another one. That one was kind of easy. So letter B, I have 16.21 minus 21.54 plus 12.72. This works with decimals as well as fractions. If you like working with fractions, a lot of decimals can be changed to fractions. But let's do this one as it is. Okay, so we need to write this again as addition only. So 16.21 plus the opposite of 21.54, plus 12.72. Next, I'm going to group terms with like signs. 16.21 is positive, plus 12.72 is positive, plus the opposite of 21.54. That's the only negative term. Now I'm going to add numbers with like terms. I could do this with long addition, but I just see that when I add these, it's going to add to a really easy number, 28.93 plus the opposite of 21.54. Okay, now I'm adding this last number last, and they have two different numbers with two different signs. So what we do is find the difference. It's going to be 28.93 minus 21.54. Let me just see if I can run that off to the side here, just to keep track of it a little better. So let's do, I'm going to just drag a box. So this is going to be 28.93 minus a 21.54. Okay, and we're just going to slide this over. And we're going to do this as a long subtraction problem. And as I do that, I'm going to realize, okay, let's see, 3 minus 4 I can't do, but I can borrow. 13 minus 4 is 9, but I borrowed one from here. So actually, up there, I have now an 8. Okay, 8 minus 5 is 3. I can do that. Make sure I have my decimal in the right spot. 8 minus 1 is 7. And that should be it, 7.39. Let me just double check that for reasonableness. 7.39. Yep, that works. Okay, so my answer here is 7.39, and then I keep the sign of the larger one. And the larger one happens to be the positive one again. So 7.39 is my overall answer for B. Order the numbers from least to greatest. All right, so in this type of problem, what I need to do is make sure I have a common denominator in fractions, and any decimals I should turn to a fraction. Also, if any of my numbers are negative, the biggest negative number is the least. So -1 is the only negative number. That one's the least of the numbers. All right, but now I have to look at these other numbers. I have 3/4, 5/8, and 0.85. Okay, so what am I going to do with these? Well, first of all, 3/4 I can rewrite in terms of eighths. 3/4, if I multiply by 2 over 2, I'm just multiplying by 1 in a fancy way. So I'm going to have the same number. If I multiply by 2 over 2, I get 6 over 8. Well, 6 over 8 is bigger than 5 over 8. What about 0.85? That's going to be 85 over 100, which simplifies to, let's see, I can simplify by 5. So that's going to be something over 20. Is it 17 over 20? 17 over 20. How does that compare to 5/8? I can't simplify 5. Okay, so I'm looking at 5/8 and 6/8, right? I need to compare 17 over 20 to 5/8 and 6/8. The only thing I'm going to be able to do is find a common denominator between eighths and 20ths. And as I'm thinking about it, if I double 20, let's say I multiply this fraction by 2 over 2. So it's going to be 40 on the bottom and 34 on the top. 34 over 40. 6/8, I'm going to multiply by 5 over 5. So it's going to become 30 over 40. Okay, so 6/8 is smaller than 85 over 100. Remember, 6/8 came from 3/4. So 3/4 is bigger than 5/8, and 0.85 is the biggest because it's 34 over 40. So that's going to be the biggest one of all. So the answer is going to be -1, and then 5/8, and then 3/4, and then 0.85. That's from least to greatest. And all I did was I found common denominators for fractions. I turned everything to fraction, found common denominators for everything, and that allowed me to compare fractions fairly. Letter D. All right, so for letter D, I have to do 2 problems in one. It's going to be 3.2 plus -2.8 minus 5.2. That's my first problem. Let's solve that one. I'm going to change this to an all addition problem. So it's going to be plus the opposite of 5.2. Then the next thing I'm going to do is combine terms with, I'm going to group terms with like signs, but I already have the two negatives on the right. So I'm going to add the numbers with like signs. It's going to be 3.2 plus a negative, and this is going to be negative 6, negative 7, negative 8, negative 8. Okay, 3.2 plus negative 8. I find the difference between those. That's going to be 4.8, and then I keep the sign that has the greater absolute value. Well, 8 has a bigger absolute value than 3.2, so this is going to be negative 4.8 as my answer. All right, then for the next part of this, this is kind of an easy one because everything's in 12ths. The only thing that's going to be hard about this is it's going to be hard to compare something in 12ths, but we can figure this out. 7/12 minus 5/12 plus negative 11/12. I need to rewrite this a little bit. So it's going to be 7/12 plus the opposite of 5/12, and then plus the opposite of 11/12. Okay, so now I've got my terms grouped with like signs, so I'm going to go ahead and combine those. I'm going to have 7/12 plus, and then negative 5/12 plus negative 11/12 is negative 16. So negative 16/12. Anyway, 7/12 minus 16/12. I find the difference between 7 and 16, which is 9. And then I keep the sign of the one that's greater, has a greater absolute value. Negative 16/12 has a greater absolute value than 7/12. So this is going to give me negative 9/12. All right, that simplifies, by the way, to negative 3/4. And I know that negative 3/4 is the same as negative 0.75. So which is less? Negative 4.8 or negative 0.75? Negative 4.8 is more negative, so it's going to be smaller than negative 0.75. So the symbol I would have to plug in there is the less than symbol. And then finally, the very last problem, letter E. Jonah ran a race in 32.68 seconds. Jared finished 1.92 seconds before Jonah. Gail finished 3.01 seconds after Jonah. How many seconds did it take Gail to run the race? So Jonah ran in 32.68 seconds. Jared finished 1.92 seconds before Jonah. Gail finished 3.01 seconds after Jonah. So all I do is I take 32.68 plus 3.01 seconds because it took her 3.01 more seconds than Jonah. How many seconds is that? Well, if I add those two numbers together, that's 35.69 seconds. Now, it'd be interesting to, if instead of Jonah, it asked about Jared, which is, I wonder if they were trying to do. Gail took 3.101 seconds after Jared. What you'd have to do is 32.68 minus 1.92 to get Jared's time, and then plus 3.01 to get Gail's time, if it were after Jared. But that's not how this one's written, so I'm just going to do it as written, and that is how you do it. All right, that's the lesson. You should be able to do numbers 1 through 30 for next time.